Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Bite Size, where we take one of our normal services, turn them into a bite-sized devotional for you to enjoy on the go. Hey guys, sorry, don't mind me, I'm just counting my rolls of toilet paper. Wouldn't want to run out. That would be horrible. Sorry. Have you ever noticed how we tend to lose our common sense when things get out of control? Like, say for instance, you're being quarantined for some reason and suddenly everyone is terrified they will run out of toilet paper. And then everyone panic buys all the toilet paper, and then there is no toilet paper. And then the very thing that they were worried about was caused by their own panic. And then they panic even more, and then they buy more stuff because they're panicking, and then they just really panic, and then the whole world just goes away, and then it blows up and it's crazy and it's all over. Crazy, right? Common sense says, nah, you don't need 100 rolls of toilet paper. But emotions and getting caught up in the moment say, yeah, you don't need 100 rolls of toilet paper, you need 300. And, talking about common sense, do you know another time we tend to lose common sense? Relationships. And you've probably seen this happen with a friend or someone you know. Maybe that person is really smart when it comes to nearly every other area of their life, but when they start dating someone, it's like they become dumb overnight. For example, maybe you have a friend who says things like, I've never dated someone like this before. We have something special. And you're thinking, let's be real here. The last 4 girls you dated were exactly like this girl, and none of those situations ended well, which means that this one probably won't end well. Or maybe you've heard a girl say, there's nothing going on between us. We're just hanging out. But then you see them spending every waking moment together, abandoning all of their friends and texting each other nonstop. Or maybe you've heard someone say, I know that most high school relationships don't end up in marriage, but I know we're going to end up together. And here's the thing, dating can be a great part of your high school years. The problem is, when we're in a relationship, it's harder to see things clearly, and when someone can't see a situation clearly, they make choices they wouldn't have made otherwise. They make choices that they really end up regretting. And what's interesting is that it's so easy to see something or someone being a bad choice for a friend, but when it's you or me, it's not as easy. Things aren't as clear. For example, maybe one of your friends dated someone who doesn't have the best reputation, and you thought that he or she was making a bad decision, and then you met someone who also didn't have a great reputation, different reasons, but still bad. And because you felt like your situation was different, you were confident that you could handle whatever happened. Or maybe one of your friends had clear-cut boundaries about what they would and wouldn't do physically in a relationship, and then they dated someone and crossed those lines. Not the best idea, right? But then you started dating one and thought, this time is different. Feelings were hovering around a 10, and suddenly crossing lines seems like way more of a possibility to you than it used to. Or maybe you had solid evidence that your friend's boyfriend was cheating on her, so you told her, but your friend was in denial about it and stayed with him, which was clearly a bad choice that wouldn't end well. And then you dated a guy and got word that he cheated on you. Obviously this guy is canceled, right? That's the smart thing to do, but you said, he's different. Sure, he messed up, but it was an isolated event. And in every other way, he's great and perfect for me, so we'll move on from this. We'll go stronger and better. Not happening. So, see, we all tend to have some general rules when it comes to dating. 1, don't date a cheater. 2, don't date someone that brings you down. 3, don't date someone who treats you poorly. And 4, don't date someone who pulls you away from friends or goals or values you have for yourself. But when we actually start falling for someone and getting feelings and emotions involved, those rules tend to become a little more flexible, and we say things like, it's fine, it's just the way it is, or I can control this, it won't get out of hand, or I can handle the consequences. So, how do you save your dating life from decisions you'll regret? Is that even possible? Well, to talk about that, I want to look at a story from the Bible that speaks to this issue. It involves possibly the most famous king of Israel, David, but even with those credentials, he still made some mistakes. This particular mistake took place during a war with the Ammonites, one of Israel's biggest enemies. During that time when a nation went to war, the kings themselves fought alongside their troops, but look what David did. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab and the Israelite army to fight the Ammonites. Now, David decided not to go, and this decision had consequences that would unfold. David was essentially sending this message to his troops: I want you to fight for my honor and our people, but I'm not willing to do the same. And unfortunately, that was just the beginning. While his army was at war, David was home and bored. Imagine, it's week 7 of quarantine life. You're over it. The pool is no longer fun. You've slept more than you've ever slept in your life. It's too hot to be outside, and you don't have money to go anywhere. And even if you did have money, you couldn't go anywhere because you're quarantined at your house. That's pretty much how David was. And one afternoon, David's walking around on the rooftop of his palace, and he notices a beautiful woman bathing. And see, that was a thing that happened back then. Rainwater was collected on rooftops, and then they washed in it. It's really, really weird, but it's what they did. And David wants to know more about her. Super creepy, right? But he's the king, so he sends someone to find out about her, and this was their report. She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Now, the messenger didn't just tell David her name. He made sure that David knew Bathsheba was someone's daughter and someone's wife. In other words, dude was like, I have an idea of what you want, but this isn't a good idea. She isn't an object. She is a daughter and a wife. She's not yours to have. See, David wasn't interested in logic. His judgment was clouded by emotions and a few other things. Anyways, so see, we can imagine that David made a few assumptions. 1, I'm an exception to the rules. 2, what I want isn't that bad. And 3, I can manage the consequences. So he sleeps with Bathsheba, and soon after that, Bathsheba discovers she's pregnant. Now, this was lesson number 1 for David. He was not an exception. He made an irresponsible choice, took advantage of a woman he had no right to sleep with, and got her pregnant. It was a mess. And then he just straight panics. He decides to call Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, home from war. His thinking was that if Uriah came home and slept with his wife, then everyone could say that the baby was Uriah's and not his. Now, we're really getting into reality show territory, right? Yeah. So Uriah gets home, but he doesn't feel like it's right to sleep in his own bed while his friends and fellow soldiers are fighting a war. So he slept outside the palace instead. This is admirable. He is an amazing person, but it really messed with David's plans. So David escalates his tactics. He invites Uriah over for dinner, hoping to get him drunk so that he'd go home and sleep with his wife. Again, Uriah still won't go back to his house. Once again, he sleeps outside the palace. So now David is desperate to hide what he's done, and he goes for the ultimate solution. He gives an order for Uriah to go back to war, but this time, David wants Uriah stationed at the front lines, where the fighting was the most dangerous, because if David couldn't cover up Bathsheba's pregnancy, then Uriah had to be taken out of the picture completely. And that's what happened. Uriah was killed, and afterwards David made Bathsheba one of his wives. Now, we listen to the story today and wonder, what was David thinking? Those are terrible decisions. But the truth is, there are times in all of our relationships when people might look at us and wonder the exact same thing. And even though we're not going to resort to murder, I hope, please don't. It's wrong. Don't do it. The truth is, all of us are capable of making really dumb choices and getting stuck in a situation we never could have imagined. With a bit of perspective, we could have seen how our poor choices would lead to poor outcomes, but sometimes we're in the middle of a situation we can lose perspective. We can convince ourselves that we're the exception. We believe that we won't have regrets, or we won't get caught, or we can turn things around, or we can make this right, or we won't turn out like everyone else, or we have a relationship that others can't possibly understand. So when they tell us something is off, it's just that they don't get us. And if we aren't careful, we can find ourselves in a situation like David, not exactly, of course, like David, but stuck like David, surrounded by bad decisions and wondering how we got there. And it's easy to see what David did wrong, but the question is why? Why did he continue making bad decision after bad decision? And I would say the reason is this. Throughout David's ordeal, he was asking the wrong questions. Over and over again, he was asking what he could get away with. How could he avoid the consequences? Every decision he made was through that perspective. And because he was the only person speaking in his decisions, he was able to excuse all kinds of bad ones. After all, when we believe we're the exception to the rule, just about anything can be justified. We can tell ourselves things are okay when they really, really aren't. And that's especially true in our dating lives. But here's the thing. You owe it to yourself to be honest to yourself. And what does that mean? That means when it comes to dating, it helps to ask yourself the right questions. Like, is there any area where you find yourself thinking that you can get away with something, or trying to find ways around the rules? Or is there any area where you find yourself thinking that may be true for everyone else, but it isn't true for me or us? Or is there anything that makes you think you have things under control even when everyone else is telling you differently? In other words, is there an area where you're just not being honest with yourself? So when did David realize how far he had gotten off track? Well, when a guy named Nathan spoke up. Now, Nathan was a prophet, and he approached David with an issue of someone who had a ton of sheep stealing from someone who had only a few. And David got mad, like kill the dude mad. And then Nathan was like, haha, you just got pranked, punked, you're on my reality TV show because you are the one. And David instantly repented and was instantly upset. And see, here's the thing. Nathan confronted David, and David listened. He got clarity that he had been unable to see otherwise. And see, we all need a person who will be honest with us when we're not being honest with ourselves. So this week, I encourage you to do 3 things. 1, find your Nathan. This could be a wise friend. It could be your small group leader. It could be a trusted adult. Think about the people in your life and then identify someone who will shoot straight with you. 2, ask them to help you see areas where you're not honest with yourself or facing the truth in your life. I know this sounds difficult and maybe even scary, and listen, you don't have to tell them every single detail about your relationship. Chances are they'll be able to see things just by knowing you. And 3, listen to them. Even if you find a trusted advisor and they have wise things to say, that wisdom is wasted if you won't listen. So make a decision to always give this person a chance to say what they see, to always be honest with you, even when, and especially when, it's something you may not want to hear. Because if you don't want to hear their thoughts on the situation, there's a good chance you need to hear it. Remember, you owe it to yourself to be honest to yourself. It is an incredible gift that you can give you. All right, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Bite Size. As always, we will catch you next week for another episode. Until then, guys, have a good day.
What's up, everybody? Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to click the like and subscribe button. If you want to see more videos, click down here for more. We'll catch you next time. And as always, love, love, shove, shove. Bye.